We're continuing on today in Isaiah chapter 6, continuing from verses 1 to 3, where we've been reading about the prophet Isaiah beholding a vision of the Lord in his temple, seated on a high throne, surrounded by seraphim. And we're continuing on in verse 6 today, where we're going to see those same seraphim doing some other things. So let's read our verse in Greek today. Kai apostale prosme hen ton seraphim, kai en te keri eken anthraka, hon te labidi elaben, apo tu thusiasteriou. We can translate this verse as follows. And one of the seraphim was sent to me, and it was holding in the hand a coal that it took with tongues from the altar. There's a few interesting things to see in this verse, but I want to begin by looking at this verb form, apostale. This form is from the root apostello, and in this case we're looking at an aorist passive indicative third singular. Now technically we're looking at a second aorist passive. We can see it's aorist because it has an augment and it also has secondary endings, but we also have just the eta here at the end of the verb form. Now most of the time we're used to seeing a theta eta tense formative in aorist passives, and that is the case with first aorist passives, but there are a handful of verbs out there where you do get a second aorist passive, and in that case the theta does not show up in the tense formative. The second word that's worth looking at briefly is seraphim. Now we see down here in footnote 28 that this is a transliteration or transcription of the Hebrew word seraphim. Yesterday we saw transcription as well, but I want to look at this one because you may have noticed that the Greek word ends in a nu, but our English transliteration ends in the letter M. Why would that be? Well, as we can see in the English translation in footnote 28, the Hebrew word that the Greek is transliterating here is also seraphim. This is something that we do in our English Bibles as well, because there's really not a good English word to use to translate it, so instead we transcribe it. But what about the disagreement in consonants? Well, if you have any background in either Hebrew or, more importantly, in Aramaic, you'll know that whereas in Hebrew, the plural forms of masculine nouns end in an im sound, like we see down here in seraphim, in Aramaic, which is a dialect of Hebrew, instead masculine plural nouns end in a final nun, and so it comes out as saraphin with an n sound. And this helps us understand why a translator used a nu in Greek to transliterate an m sound with a mem in Hebrew, because there is a form of Aramaic influence infiltrating the translation process.